Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Shadow Knight Nightblade build for the, I guess you could say the latest DLC, if you want to, Dragonhold, but honestly this is pretty much since the locking of CP, you could use this in any content, prior to this or whatever. But I did do some adjustments to the Shadow Knight and its build structure because I really feel like the way that this build worked and the concept behind it was really about sustaining itself. And so I looked at a lot of different options and really came down to a more interesting kind of build for it that I hope you all like. Now remember, this build is primarily a solo build, but it can be used in small group play. It can be used as a tank. It can be used as a damage dealer if you want to. I wouldn't say so much as a healer or a support character, but if you needed somebody who could bring some damage support, this can definitely do that. It is definitely built more for solo play though. So let's go ahead and take a look at the build. So the race I chose for this one in particular is the Imperial. Imperial's a really good race for this specific setup because of the fact they get the extra health, they get the extra stamina, that it makes them more tanky. They also get the return of resources on their lighted and heavy attacks, so it's kind of a nice benefit. But before we get too far into this, I will say this now. Almost any race can play this build. Imperial just happens to be the one I chose for it because of the perks it offered to the way this build plays. So, let's go ahead and take a look at our stats. We have 64 points in the stamina. This is going to give us a really good max stamina pool. As you can see, we have 31,000 max stamina. We have 29k health, a 17k magicka, and a 1040 mag recovery. 637 stam recovery. We're not playing too much off of the stam recovery this time because we are going to be doing a lot of light and heavy attacks, and with the way the Imperial works, it plays better into this kind of a setup. We do have 2351 weapon damage with a 49% weapon crit, 18k spell resist, 17k physical resist, and this is going to be really good for that, I want to stay alive, I don't want to die kind of thing. We are using the Thief of Stone, of course, to boost our weapon critical. You do and don't need this high, but it does help. We do have Major Savagery at all times, and we also are using Tri-Stat Food. So let's go ahead and take a look at our gear. First, to talk about what potions and stuff you can use with this. Primarily, tripods are going to be your best use of things you can use because of the fact that it gives you all 3 resources back, and when you solo play, you're going to want to be using that. When you're playing in small groups as a DPS, warrior power pots are really good overall. So, and then of course, like I said, Tri-Stat Food. Now let's go over our sets, starting with our monster set, the first set we use, because, why not? So the monster set we're using is Thorvikins. Thorvikins is by far one of the better sets you can use for this setup. Now, I also use this not only on this build, there is another build I have coming out for the Necromancer called the Death Knight, which I also use Thorvikins for, but different kind of setup. So this is going to give you that magicka, health, and stamina. On the Tri-Stat, we do have Invigorating on it, and this is just the traits and enchants, but let's go over the set now. The 1-piece set bonus is max health. The 2-piece, when you take damage from a nearby enemy, you summon a growing pool of desecrated bile for 8 seconds. Enemies in the bile take X amount of disease damage every second and are afflicted with minor maim and minor defile for 4 seconds. This really helps in PvP as well, but that's because it reduces their damage done and reduces their healing received and health recovery. That really plays well in PvP, but also the minor maim plays really well in this, as your character can also help with tanking or with just keeping damage down on the group. So really good for that. Alright, moving on to the next set, and of course we are using Night Mother's Gaze for this. Night Mother's Gaze, hands down one of the best sets you can use for solo play, because it does give you, especially for a stamina based character, it does give you Major Fracture. So Major Fracture reduces the enemy physical resistance by 5,280. You're doing primarily and mainly physical damage, so this is just going to keep your damage in a higher place. But it not only does it apply for you, it applies for anyone else in your group. So this is really good for that. The 2, 3, 4 piece bonus are really good for you to boost your weapon, creating your weapon damage. Alright, now moving on to the last set. And this is where things are going to get kind of questionable, because a lot of people are going to say, why this set? It's going to be explained. So the next set we're using is Undertakers. Undertakers is a really, really good set for this. First, the 2, 3, and 4 piece, and even 5 piece bonus. So the 2 piece, 4% healing taken, 3 piece, max health, 4 piece, healing done, 5 piece, max health. Now, the reason I chose this set is because of the 5 piece bonus. When you deal damage with a light attack, you apply minor lifesteal to the enemy for 8 seconds, healing you and your allies for 868 health every second when damaging them. This effect can occur once every 8 seconds. So this pretty much is like Thorvikins. Every time you take damage, you create a pool of bile. Every time you deal a light attack to an enemy, you apply lifesteal. And you can apply lifesteal to multiple targets. We are using a two-handed weapon. So when you use your light attacks, you do a cleave. So you hit multiple targets. So you can actually apply minor lifesteal to every single one of those targets. It's very powerful. Alright, moving on to our enchants and traits. Now, I already went over the enchants and trait here, but I do want to go over this again. So we do have Tri-Stat on the big pieces, so the helm, legs, and chest. This is so we can maximize our magicka, health, and stamina for solo play, group play, all that kind of stuff. And then we have our smaller pieces with max stamina to maximize our stamina pool, because we are primarily a stamina build, so, or our stamina focus. So this really allows us to build higher in the stamina, but also play off the other stats of our character, our max health and our max magicka. So we do get that greater stamina pool, but we also get that greater magicka and health pool because of those tri-stats. Now going over the traits, we have Invigorating on the helm and the legs. This is to maximize our health, magic, and stamina recovery, primarily for the purpose of mag recovery, because we do use quite a bit of magicka here. On the smaller pieces, we are using Divines to maximize our Mundus Stones. And then onto the jewelry, we are using 2 Tri-Rune rings here. Now, if you can't get these Tri-Runed, you can just leave them healthy. It's fine. You will end up with more health than you do stamina, but don't stress it. The Tri-Rune is just to help you maximize your health, magic, and stamina, again, just like Tri-Stats. Then we do have 2 weapon damage enchants on the rings, and this is going to maximize our weapon damage. Now on the necklace, we are using Infused Mag Recovery. This is to maximize our magic recovery, because we do use a lot of magicka. We want to be able to get that magicka back pretty quick, and since our magicka pool isn't super high, but it's high enough that it'll keep us sustained, we really want that good sustain too for our magic recovery. Moving on to our weapons. We are using on the front bar an Undertaker's Greatsword with a Diseased Damage enchant. Now you don't have to use a Diseased Damage enchant if you don't want to. You can use an Absorb Stamina, you can use whatever you want. I just put the disease there because I felt it fit in its place. So, Nerd Honed on the weapon. This is going to give you maximum damage output with your two-handed weapon, but it's also going to give you maximum stamina capabilities and magicka capabilities towards anything that you might be using that does damage or heals or whatever. It's going to help you out with that. Moving on to the bow on the back bar, we are using an Infused Weapon Damage enchant. The infused is to maximize that weapon damage enchant so we get that higher or greater amount of weapon and spell damage. Now, another race that works really good with this build is Dark Elf, and then of course Khajiit. But every race can play this build. You're going to have some flaws in some of the other races, but it still works out in the long run when you really get into it and you look at all the different perks and benefits that each race can offer you in the build. Alright, now that we've done that, let's go over our skills. And just like I've done in the past, and I forgot to do in my last video, I'm going to go over the skills on my bars, which ones I have equipped for solo play, and then I'm going to show you all the skills I have unlocked, and why I have those skills unlocked. I'm kind of going to explain minorly. So, starting with our first skill we have on our bar, we do use Wrecking Blow. This is primarily there for high damage output. It also grants our next light attack extra increased damage by granting us Empower. Next we have Carve. Now this does an arc of damage in front of you because you swing out in front of you. You apply multiple hits, so this gives you a chance of applying your Major Fracture to multiple targets, and then on top of that the damage over time for 10 seconds. And it helps keep up your disease enchant pretty well, or proccing that. The next thing we have is Spiked Bone Shield. Now we have this here because this does do a damage shield on us for 9k damage, and it also returns 80% of any direct damage absorbed back to the enemy, and this ability scales up our max health. It's also a really good synergy in group play because people can activate it and get the Bone Wall synergy, giving them and other people around them a damage shield equal to 30% of their max health for 6 seconds. And then our next ability we have is Dark Cloak. Now this is our primary heal. We're going to be using this a lot. This is also our resistance buff. So this also gives us that because of the way the Nightblade works. In order to get the resistance buff through the Shadow Tree, it is a passive called Shadow Barrier, and you have to activate a ability within the Shadow Tree in order to give you that buff. So we are using Dark Cloak to do that. Now it only lasts 13.5 seconds, but it does give you the Major Major Resolve, sorry, increasing physical and spell resist by 5,280 for the duration, and this duration is increased by 25% for each piece of heavy armor. We are playing a 5-piece heavy armor build, so we're using 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium. My usual setup for this is medium helm, light belt, everything else heavy. So, alright. But this is going to heal you so much every second for 8 seconds, and on top of that it's going to give you minor protection while shrouded, reducing your damage taken by 8%. Alright. Moving on to the next ability we have on our bar is Evil Hunter. This is a really, really good self buff. Now the reason I keep this here is because, one, it's going to give you 3% weapon damage from the fighter's skill passive. So this is just going to give you 3% weapon damage, but it's also going to give you, while slotted, that higher weapon critical rating. So you don't really need to use potions to buff your weapon critical. Next ability we have is Incapacitating Strike. Now this does disease damage, and it causes them to take 20% more damage for the next 6 seconds. This is the primary ultimate we're going to use most of the time, and if you can use it at 120, not at 67. So it's a super cheap ultimate, and you can get this thing going off like crazy. While slotted, you gain Reeve, which restores magic and stamina when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack on an enemy with a negative effect on them. Now remember, your helm is going to apply negative effects to enemies, so you will be getting that magic of stamina back every light attack. So this is going to help you really keep that resource management going. Moving on to the back bar where we have our bow. First ability, of course, Venom Arrow. This does damage up front and damage over 10 seconds. It can also, if you hit an enemy who's casting, can interrupt them, send them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. In solo play or even in group play, that is a huge benefit. Next up, we have Arrow Barrage. This is just really good for damage over time. I use this quite a bit, actually. Keep it up as much as you can. This is also going to keep your weapon damage enchant procced. So, next we have Leeching Strikes. Now, this is going to be another way to sustain. Anytime you deal light or heavy attack damage, you get health and stamina back. Now, remember, you're already getting health back every time you light attack because of your one set, the Undertaker set. Now you're getting even more health back. And then on top of that, you're getting even more health back because you get increased healing done and healing received. But when it ends, it actually restores stamina to you, which is really good. And then we have Mirage. Now, Mirage is really good because this is going to give you major evasion and minor resolve. So this reduces your damage from area attacks by 25%, and then it increases your physical and spell resistance by 1320 for 26 seconds. So you just cast this and let it run its course. Don't cast this a lot, just cast it once every so many, like every 25 seconds. This way you can keep this up really well. Then, of course, we have our Evil Hunter here to keep our crit rate up. And on the bow side, that's going to come out really handy. And then our last ability we have here is called Velo Blades. Now, this is really good not only for group play, but also for solo play. Because what it does is it reduces movement speed of enemies in the area of the circle by 70%. It deals magic damage every second for the duration of 18 seconds. And it grants you and your allies standing in the circle major protection, reducing your damage taken by 30%. There's also a synergy applying to it, so it's another good way to get a synergy out to your allies, even though you're playing like more of a tanky character or you're playing more of a DPS type character. This is just a really good support ability. Alright, now, as I said, I will go over class, all the abilities I do unlock. So Incapacitating Strikes is the ultimate I use. I do have Killer's Blade, Ambush, Mirage, Reaper's Mark, and Relentless Focus, of course, unlocked on the Assassination tree. Shadow Tree, I have Velo Blade, Surprise Attack, Dark Cloak, Twisting Path, Mass Hysteria, and Dark Shade. And yes, I do use all of these abilities. It just depends on the kind of situation I'm in, if I'm like, what content I'm playing. So this particular build itself, the way it's set up skill-wise, is set for solo play. If I was going to play in a group, I would change a lot of my skills out to be more group-orientated and less focused on solo play. On the ultimate, we have Soul Siphon, Swallow Soul, Healthy Offerings, Debilitate, Leeching Strikes, and Power Extraction. And I do have every passive unlocked under the class passive abilities. This is going to give me access to more passive stuff when I need it for different things, different situations. Now, moving on to weapon skills, we primarily use a two-handed and bow, so we do have all the skills, ultimates, active abilities, and passives for those two things unlocked. Now, this build can also use a sword and shield. If you want to, you would have to unlock the abilities, and unlock the abilities that you would want to use for the build. So, with two-handed, we have Onslaught, Wrecking Blow, Stampede, Carve, Reverse Slice, and Rally. And then on bow, we have Ballista, Focused Aim, Arrow Barrage, Draining Shot, Bombard, and Venom Arrow, along with all the passives. Moving on to armor. Now, this is primarily a heavy armor build, but we are going to go through the passives for each one. So we do have on the light armor, we can use 3 of the passives. So Grace, Evocation, and Spell Warding we are going to use. And then the same thing goes with medium armor, Dexterity, Windwalker, and Athletics. Now, you can take Improved Sneak if you want, if you're doing a lot of PvP, but it's really not going to be helpful. Heavy armor, all the passives. You're going to take Resolve, Constitution, Juggernaut, Revitalize, and Rapid Mending. You're going to want all these on your character, along with the Unstoppable Brute. World skills, Soul Magic. So we have Shattered Soul, Consuming Trap, Soul Shatter, Soul Summons, and Soul Lock. And that's if you want to use these abilities. Sometimes they can come in handy when you're solo playing in certain areas. Like, if you're solo playing in Overland, Consuming Trap's a really great ability to use because it allows you to not only fill empty soul gems, but it allows you to get resources back and keep you sustained while you're just clearing through an area, or you're just farming through a dungeon or a delve. public dungeon, not normal dungeon, but like public dungeons or delves, or you're playing in the, oh my gosh, you guys are I can't even believe this. But if you're solo playing through Craglorn. So, alright, moving on to guild skills. Fighter's Guild, Flawless, Dawnbreaker, Silver Leash, Ring of Preservation, Evil Hunter, Barb Trap, and of course all the passives. Same thing with the Mage's Guild, we want to get all the passives because of the abilities we do unlock. So, Ultimate, Ice, Comet, really good CC, crowd control, Inner Light, Degeneration, Scalding Rune, and Balance. And then Psijic Order, we're going to use Temporal Guard, even though we don't really need it because we do get minor protection from our buff here. But we can use this, and it works out really well, especially in PvP. We have Time Freeze, Crushing Weapon, Race Against Time, Symbiosis, really good heal if you want to add some support to your character, Introspection, and then of course moving on to Undaunted, we have Sanguine Altar, which we really don't need because we have Minor Lifesteal already applied to our character. We can apply it to multiple enemies just as well as this can. We have Shadow Silk, Inner Beast for our taunt if we need to taunt for tanking, Spike Bone Shield, Mystic Orb, and then of course both the passives here. And it always makes sure you get all the passives no matter what to everything, and don't do like I do here because if you do use any of these abilities, taking advantage of the passives is going to be super beneficial to you. Alright, moving on to Assault skills. Now, Assault skills and the Alliance War skills, Assault and Support, these are kind of weird because they work in both areas, but some work better in certain areas than like in PvP than they do in PvE. In my opinion, the best ones for PvE are Aggressive Horn, Echoing Vigor, and Razor Caltrops. In support line, Reviving Barrier, Efficient Purge, Stalwart Guard, and of course Magicka Aid, because we can take advantage of that for having one of these slotted. It does boost our Magicka recovery by 10%. So, Racials, Imperial. Now we do get Toughness, which I said increases our max health. We do get the Imperial Medal, which increases max stamina, and then we get Red Diamond. This reduces the cost of all your abilities. Doesn't matter what it is. Magicka, Stamina, and from what I understand, Ultimate as well by 3%. And then when you deal direct damage, you heal yourself for 380 and restore 333 Magicka and Stamina. This effect can occur every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, you're getting 330 Magicka and Stamina back, along with the 100 every light attack from Leeching Strikes, and then on top of that, the extra resources you're going to get from other aspects of your character. So this build has really good sustainability when it comes to Magicka and Stamina. So, alright, now that I've gone over all that stuff, I do want to go over a few crafting passives here. Alchemy, Medicinal Use, really a good one to get, especially if you're using potions a lot in the, like, more towards using, like, playing through a lot of dungeons, or even playing some raids in, like, normal mode, or even in veteran mode with a, you know, group of people who is not looking to do score runs. You can take advantage of this. Now, provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur, this allows your food and drinks to last longer, so if you're using certain foods or drinks, this is just going to help you out in the long run. Alright, now that we've done that, let's go over our CP, or our champion points. Now, my champion point setup is going to be a lot different than most people's, and that's because I set it up to be more universal. Okay, so I don't have to go in and change my CP constantly. I can just play the game. I set my CP and leave it alone. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in here to the red tree. We have 56 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 20 in the Spell Shield. This increases spell resistance by 1900. We have 43 in the Hardy, reducing damage from physical poison disease by 10%. And then Elemental Defender reduces damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And yes, you know that 30% Circle of Protection you put down that gives you that major protection, which reduces your damage by 30%, and that extra 8% minor protection? Those three, those two plus this do stack together. So you can get a lot of damage reduction out of your character by playing smart. We also have 31 into Thick Skin. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects. by 13%. This does not apply to area of effect damage. That's another reason why Mirage plays so well into this, because that'll give you 25% damage mitigation to that area of effect damage, along with that damage over time effect, like poison, disease, that kind of stuff. Bleeds. Alright, moving on to the final red tree. We have 40 in the Bastion. This just increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. We are using Bone Shield, which scales off our max health, so this is going to play really well into that. Then we have 19 into Quick Recovery. This increases your healing received by 5%, and then we have 18 into Heavy Armor Focus. Now this increases your physical resistance by 1729 while wearing 5 pieces of heavy armor. Since we are using 5 pieces of heavy armor, we get higher physical resistance. Alright. Moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord. This reduces break free cost by 16%. We have 16 in the Sprinter. This reduces sprint cost by 10%. 16 in the Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree here, we have 43 into Arcanist. This increases your mag recovery by 10%. And I've told people this before. I have 75 in Tenacity. This increases the Magicka and Stamina of your fully charged heavy attacks by 14%. If you don't know, your base return of resources is 30%. When you add 14% to 30%, that is a 44% that goes to 44% increase. But if you actually take a look at the return amount, because of how return works with your fully charged heavy attacks, you're not getting as much back when you're doing this in like medium armor. But if you're using heavy armor, you get another 25% on top of that. So you're actually getting like 64% back when you do a heavy attack. So you're actually getting twice the amount of what you would normally get. So this is really good to have on heavy armor. Moving on, we have 40 into Tumbling, reduces your dodge roll cost by 16%, and then 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Yes, you do block and dodge roll, even as a solo player. Moving on to the blue tree, we have 43 into Bless. This just increases your healing done by 10%, and then along with that other 4% you get, and some of the other things you have, you can really build up the ability of the major or minor lifesteal a lot. And then moving on, we have 35 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This is going to increase the light and heavy attacks of your two-handed and bow by 20%. It does affect other things, but since that's what we're using, we want that increased by 20%. And that's because we do a lot of light and heavy attacks with the two-handed. We have 40 into Mastered Arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. And of course, it will unlock Retaliation, Reposit, and Butcher. Butcher is a really good one. This increases your light and heavy attacks when enemies are below 25% health by 5%. Moving on to the final blue tree, we have 56 in the Mighty. This increases your physical, poison, and disease damage done by 12%. We also have 56 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 20%. And then we have 40 in the Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. So that is our CP setup. That is pretty much everything about the build. I am going to do a quick little tiny parse on this guy here just to show you guys like how this build works in sustain and everything. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you have your Mirage up, your Leeching Strikes, and then just pretty much go to town on your enemy. Now, because we are using this as a target, I mean, I'm not using any real other abilities than what I would normally use. Which is my standard setup here. So, as you can see, I'm not even using my ultimate or anything, any of that stuff. And I do roughly about 12k DPS, which to some people isn't a lot. But when it comes to solo play, that's actually a really good amount of damage for you to be able to do in a solo experience. But you're going to be using a lot more resources than that. So you're going to be doing a lot more heavy attacks and not light attacks. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that when we go now to a dungeon, and you guys can see how well this does in solo play. So I'm going to go to the Depths of Malatar. Yes, this is on normal mode, not veteran mode. Depths of Malatar is a dungeon that got added with the Wrathstone, I believe it was, DLC at the beginning of this last year. But it's a very difficult, challenging type dungeon, especially for new players, because it is a DLC dungeon. But it is also a really good one that can be soloed in normal mode. So, and I just love the mechanics of it. So now I'm just gonna play to the first boss encounter to show you like the sustainability and just to show you like how the build works in a solo environment. Now I can solo this in normal and in veteran. I'm not gonna do it in veteran because it takes a lot longer to do so. So I'm gonna show you in normal. But if you guys also see there, my Leeching Strikes and my Red Diamond, Reeve, all that stuff is going off like crazy because of the amount of stuff I have going on. And my heavy attacks do return roughly about 3,444 resources. So keeping that 31k stamina in check is really easy. Because I'm getting Reeve, I'm getting all these other things back. And you don't really need to use your buffs too much to heal yourself or anything like that, because you get the minor lifesteal and Leeching Strikes is healing you. So... And you can't see the minor lifesteal, but it's 1,177, and that's with just me doing it. So, and then sometimes it's like 800 and something and stuff like that. But like if it crits, it does really good. Now, this is where this build really will shine, is against this boss. And that's because we get that minor maim, that minor defile, all that stuff applied to him. And it just really helps out us with survivability and kind of sustainability. Where are you hiding? There he is. And as I said, I do block. Not all the time, but I do block because I'm so used to solo playing most of the time that it just becomes second nature to me. So now I'm going to fight him down to about 60-something% health. I'm not going to take him much more below that. Let me get out of that. Shields and stuff up. I'm going to go ahead and heavy attack. I'm actually going to switch to a potion. Watch this, guys. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and let him kill me, if he can. Alright. Go back to the Way Shrine here. But that's pretty much the build. It is a very fun build if you like this kind of play style and stuff like that. I myself am a huge fan of the Shadow Knight or not the Shadow Knight, the Nightblade when it comes to this kind of a build, because it's a very versatile build. It's a very self-sustaining build. It's a very just like, I can take on a lot of things and I don't have to really stress about it. Another good place to check out if you really want to check out how well the build can survive is the world boss in the Murkmire DLC. The first world boss you come across has a lot of ads, and the boss itself, and this thing can just pretty much stand there indefinitely, just a few heavy attacks here and there, and you don't have to worry because you're not going to die. So it's a really fun build though. Let me know what you guys think, and of course that comes to the end of the video, which means if you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Also, if you want to see more videos by me, you can hit the notification bell, and that'll notify you when I post new videos. Unfortunately, that is one of the new things with YouTube, and we need to let people know that if you really want to watch somebody's content, click on those notification bells. Other than that, I just want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.